Wake up. No alarm, no phone, no schedule. Just light filtering through the entrance of a rock shelter somewhere in East Africa, roughly 200,000 years ago. The fire from last night has burned down to coals. Someone beside you is still asleep. Outside, the world is already moving. You have one job today. Stay alive. But here is what nobody tells you about that job. It did not take all day. For most of the 20th century, anthropologists assumed that prehistoric life was a relentless grind, that our ancestors spent every waking hour hunting, foraging, fleeing predators, and barely surviving. Thomas Hobbes famously described pre-civilized life as solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And that image stuck. It became the default assumption about what it meant to be human before cities, before agriculture, before everything we call progress. It was almost entirely wrong.
In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Solins presented a paper at a conference in Chicago that reframed everything. He had been studying data from multiple hunter-gatherer societies still living in the traditional way: the Juhwansi of the Kalahari Desert, the Hadza of Tanzania, the Arnhem Land Aboriginal communities of northern Australia. And what he found contradicted nearly every assumption his field had ever made. The average hunter-gatherer, Solins calculated, worked between 3 and 5 hours per day to meet all of their survival needs. 3 to 5 hours, not 12, not 16, 3 to 5. The rest of the day was, by any reasonable definition, free time.
Solins called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society, not because they had material abundance, they owned almost nothing, but because they had something modern humans have almost entirely lost: time.
So what did they actually do with it? The answer is more human than you might expect. They slept. A lot. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups consistently show sleep patterns that would be considered excessive by contemporary standards. The Hadza of Tanzania, one of the most studied traditional societies on Earth, sleep an average of 7 hours at night and frequently nap during the hottest part of the afternoon. They go to sleep shortly after dark and wake before sunrise. Their bodies follow the light. But they also had something our culture has almost completely dismantled: genuine rest. Not scrolling, not passive consumption, not the exhausted collapse at the end of a 14-hour workday. Actual stillness. Sitting, watching, being present in a place without an agenda attached to it. Anthropologist Kim Hill, who spent decades living alongside the Aceh people of Paraguay, described watching groups of adults simply sit together for hours, not doing nothing in the anxious modern sense, not waiting for something, not killing time, just existing together in a shared space with no pressure to produce anything. He said it was one of the most foreign things he had ever witnessed. But rest was only part of it. Because ancient humans were extraordinarily social in ways that served functions far beyond entertainment. Grooming. In primate societies, physical grooming, picking through fur, removing parasites, cleaning wounds, is the primary mechanism of social bonding. It builds trust. It establishes alliances. It communicates status and affection simultaneously. Early humans inherited this system and then transformed it. Evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford proposed that human language itself evolved as a replacement for physical grooming. As human groups grew too large for everyone to groom everyone else directly, language became the tool that did the same social work at scale. Talking about other people, gossip in the most neutral sense of the word, became the mechanism through which humans maintained relationships across larger and larger groups.
Dunbar estimated that in modern humans, approximately 65% of all conversation is social information. Who is trustworthy? Who did what to whom? Who is reliable and who is not? This is not small talk. This is the core infrastructure of human society, and it has been running continuously for at least 200,000 years. Your ancestors spent a significant portion of every day talking about other people, and it was one of the most evolutionarily important things they could have been doing.
Then there was play. This is the part that tends to surprise people most, because play is not something humans invented after they became civilized. Play is ancient. It predates our species. And among hunter-gatherer groups, it did not stop at childhood. Adults played regularly, enthusiastically, without apparent embarrassment. The Huohansi of the Kalahari, documented by anthropologist Lorna Marshall in the 1950s, spent evenings dancing, playing music, telling jokes, and engaging in elaborate games with no practical purpose whatsoever. The Kung San people, studied by Richard Lee through the 1960s, held community dances that lasted through the night, not for ritual purposes alone, though ritual was present, but because it was pleasurable. Because movement and music and collective rhythm produced something in the human body that sitting still did not. Researchers studying these communities consistently noted high levels of laughter. Not occasional laughter, constant laughter. Jokes ran through daily life the way background noise runs through a modern office. Hunter-gatherer humor tended toward the physical, the absurd, and the sharply observational. People were teased. Stories were embellished for comic effect. Elders made fun of themselves. Happiness researchers who have spent time with traditional communities frequently report the same disorienting observation. These people, by every material measure significantly poorer than the researchers studying them, often appear significantly happier.
But ancient humans were not only resting and socializing, they were making things. The oldest known art in the world is approximately 45,000 years old. Cave paintings found in Sulawesi, Indonesia, depicting animals and human figures with a sophistication that shocked the archaeologists who discovered them. But artistic expression almost certainly began far earlier. Ochre pigments showing signs of deliberate use have been found at sites in South Africa dating back 100,000 years. Perforated shells that appear to have been worn as jewelry appear in the archaeological record at least 130,000 years ago. Your ancestors were making art long before they were farming, long before they were building cities, long before they had any of the infrastructure we associate with civilization. They were decorating their bodies, they were painting walls, they were carving bone into shapes that served no survival function. They were doing this in their free time, which, as it turns out, they had plenty of. There was also the transmission of knowledge. In societies without writing, everything that mattered had to be carried in human memory and passed between people through direct interaction. This made storytelling not an entertainment option, but a critical technology. Elders held the knowledge of which plants were medicinal and which were poisonous, which animals behaved in which ways at which times of year, where water could be found in drought conditions, what had happened the last time a disease swept through the group, and what had helped. This knowledge was encoded in stories, told and retold, refined across generations. The stories that survived were the ones that were memorable,
which meant they tended to be vivid, emotionally resonant, and structured around the kind of dramatic tension that makes a narrative impossible to stop following. Every culture in human history has produced stories. Not some cultures. Every single one, universally, without exception. This does not happen by accident. Storytelling is not decoration. It is the oldest information storage system our species ever built. And then there was the practice that modern science is only now beginning to take seriously. Silence. The Hadza have a concept with no direct English translation, a kind of purposeful, alert stillness. Not meditation in the structured sense, not prayer. Just a practiced, cultivated ability to be completely present in an environment, to listen to it, to notice what it is doing. Hunter-gatherers developed this capacity out of practical necessity. Tracking an animal required reading an environment at a level of detail most modern humans have entirely lost. The angle of a broken twig, the freshness of a footprint, the direction a bird flew when disturbed, the smell of water on a dry wind. But the practice of that attention, the hours spent simply being in a landscape, fully present, reading it, produced a mental state that researchers studying these communities describe as deeply calm. Not bored, not restless, calm in a way that seems qualitatively different from the calm most modern people experience. Neuroscientists studying the brains of experienced meditators find patterns of activity that closely resemble what alert, present, unhurried attention to a natural environment produces. The ancient humans who spent their afternoons tracking, watching, and listening were not wasting time. They were running a practice that kept their nervous systems in a state of regulated, sustained calm that modern humans spend billions of dollars trying to chemically approximate. So here is what a day actually looked like. Wake before sunrise, tend the fire, eat whatever remained from the previous day, move through the landscape for a few hours, gathering, hunting, reading the environment. Return to camp, eat, rest through the heat of midday. Groom, talk, joke, play. As the afternoon cooled, move again if needed. Return before dark, build the fire up, tell stories, sing, dance, sleep. That was it. Not a grind, not a desperate scramble. A life structured around movement, connection, rest, and meaning, in proportions that the human body and brain had evolved over millions of years to expect. And then, roughly 10,000 years ago, agriculture arrived. Food became more reliable, and work became something you did all day, every day, for the rest of your life. Skeletal remains from early agricultural societies show a dramatic increase in spinal deformities, joint damage, and repetitive stress injuries compared to hunter-gatherer populations. The bones tell the story clearly. Farming was harder on the human body than anything that came before it. We gave up the original affluent society for surplus grain, and we have been trying to buy back our free time ever since. Tonight, when the day ends and you finally stop, when you sit down with no particular agenda and nowhere to be, that feeling you are reaching for, that elusive sense of being present without pressure, your ancestors felt that every afternoon. It was not a luxury they had to earn. It was just Tuesday.